good morning, and welcome to the 𝗥𝗵𝗲 show. Today, we're going to be talking about Ria is going to be taking over the conversation today, and I just want to welcome each and every one who tune in, because 80% is showing up, and when you show up for your success, this is what we want. So we always appreciate everyone who tunes in. My name is 𝗥𝗵𝗲.
My name is Ria,
and
welcome.
Thanks to our show. Welcome, everyone. Ria, I'm going to pass the mic to you.
Thank you, 𝗥𝗵𝗲. And today's topic is a continuation from the book of Robert Kiyosaki, Increase Our Financial IQ. So let me share my screen so we can begin. And today's topic is all about code of learning, whether you're a student, whether you're a novice in business, or whether you've started, your own journey in business. It's good to learn, to have a refresher, or if you're a student, this may be something new to you about the cone of learning. So the cone of learning from the book of Robert Kiyosaki said, in 2005, the Arizona State University did a study on the viability of Robert's game for teaching accounting and investing to business school students. And their findings show that students learn faster and retain knowledge longer than when they learn in other ways. And this is the cone of learning. So we have to remember, whether we are a student, like I said, or we are in business, or we're starting in business, how can we implement this cone of learning in such a way that we learn faster and retain the knowledge that we learn from others longer, so that we are successful in business? So this is the cone of learning. There's two ways. One, we can be active. Two, we can be passive. Active means we are involved in the learning. Passive means others are providing it to us and we're just merely hearing, listening. So they did a study, and the study showed that after 2 weeks, right, people tend to remember the active part of learning. So what are they? 90% is either you do the real thing, your feet is wet in the water, simulating the real experience. So for example, if you're a pilot, you're in a mock pilot, right? It's a fake cockpit, and you can crash the plane. So that's a simulation. You can crash the plane and you still come out alive. Doing a dramatic presentation is also one of them. So in this active phase of learning, doing the real thing, simulating the real experience, or doing a dramatic presentation, after 2 weeks, people still remember what they learned. Now, if you give a talk or you participate in a discussion, 70% of what happened, of what you contributed, you will still remember. And when we become passive learners, then it goes down. So seeing it done on a location, watching a demonstration, looking at an exhibit, or watching a demonstration, watching a movie, that's 50%. Looking at pictures, 30%. Hearing words, 20%. Reading, 10%. So this is another diagram showing the cone of experience. Active learning, you have high retention rate, you are doing it. That means you have high sensory experience. You remember, we have 5 senses, right? Hearing, touching, tasting, and all the other senses. So if we involve all of our senses, that means we get to experience it highly, and that means that we have high retention rate. Now, when we have moderate retention, we're just merely observers, so our sensory experience is moderate. And when we are passive, low retention, we're only abstracting, then that will have low sensory experience. Now, to go on this deeper, verbal, right, this is the passive, so I'll discuss each and every one. So I'm going to start on the verbal, which is the passive learning. This is the lowest. So verbal symbols refers to text or words like terminologies, rules, formulas, and other similar concepts. It's located at the peak of the cone, right? That's the peak of the cone, which means that it is the most abstract learning experience, as we or they don't give any visual representation of a subject. Next, visual symbols. As you can see, there are charts now, diagrams, infographics, graphs, flow charts. They're used to help make concepts easier for our brains to understand and interpret concepts. So visual symbols is second on the rank in terms of passive learning. Now, third, which is the recordings. Here we are, recordings, radio, and still pictures. So this level refers to photographs, audio recordings like podcasts. While this level is less abstract, learners are still observers, right? They're just merely listening. This level also debunks. It was proven wrong, right? About the misconception that auditory media is better than visual, since photos and or audio are put together at the same level. Now, motion pictures and educational television. Now, this is movies. That's on the fourth, on the level of passive learning. Now, recent publications combine motion pictures and educational television on the same level as they are similar mediums. But in the original model, they were counted as separate levels. These levels are all about learning videos and animations where both visual, eyes, auditory, hearing are being used. While these mediums don't create realistic experiences, they provide interesting customization options to create a deliberate learning experience. And learners have the option to rewind or replay videos as needed. Now we're headed now to the moderate retention, videos and exhibits. Exhibits are meaningful displays with limited handling. Sometimes they can be interactive exhibits too, especially if you go to, for the kids where they can touch the animal. So other kinds of exhibits are designed to be interactive, which encourages direct participation and the use of a range of senses from learners. So remember, if we use our senses, then the more that we remember what we learned. So galleries and museums are examples of exhibits, giving learners the opportunity to closely expose themselves to educational materials, inventions, and many more. So field trips, study trips. Study trips are where learners have the opportunity to observe objects, situations, activities, and other related information in a real world settings. So much like exhibits, in some instances, learner in the study trips or field trips have the opportunity to briefly participate in a real life experience of a job or activity. Demonstration. Demonstration is the next in line going now, where we're in the active learning, but the least of the active learning. Demonstration are visual explanation of how something works. It also works as a visual guide on how to do something. This medium of instruction is used when there are logistic limitations for a hands-on learning activity for everyone. So learners learn from observing someone else to do an activity, demonstration. But there are also demonstrations where they actually they ask the participants to do a return demonstration. So by doing a return demonstration, now you get to experience it. So you have a high sensory experience. So the more that you actually will remember over the next 2 weeks what you've learned. Dramatized experience are recreated situations where learners can directly participate, such as role plays that are based on real life happenings. Learners can immerse themselves in a situation even if it's not the real thing. Now, contrived experiences are edited or imitated versions of reality, like mock-ups, simulations, games, and models. And that's why I've heard before, gamers, right? When they're very good in video gaming, they're actually good in so there's, drones now, right, which can be used for Warcraft. So they actually hire those gamers to actually play, drive those drones. So as some concepts are too complex, this kind of learning experience make it easier to visualize and understand a subject. Especially in theory, for example, like I said, if you're a pilot, in theory, there's so many things that is vague in the book, but once you are on that mock, yes, simulated aircraft, then you get to understand better what you learn in the textbook. Now, direct purposeful experiences. So if you want to sell, right, it's not just, teach your kids or teach your students in theory, but you actually have to immerse them into real life experiences. So for example, how do you do that? Selling lemonade stands, selling, some candies at school, right? If they allow. So that's a direct, purposeful experience. So this simply refers to hands-on learning or practice of a real thing. It's located at the base. This is the base of the cone of experience, which means that it gives the most concrete, tangible learning experience. Learners are actively participating in activity, allowing them to make use of all their senses in the learning process. So this is the cone of learning. I'll talk more about it on the next Alka and Ria show. I hope you learned something. In terms of learning, what way, active or passive, are you better able to remember what you learned over the next 2 weeks? So if you want to learn more, whether it's business, finance, or teaching your kids, whatever you want in life for them to learn, make sure that you remember these cones of learning, because it's not just having our mouth do the talking, but actually showing them and having them immerse in real life, direct, purposeful experiences. So stay tuned for more of Ria and Alka's show.
That is so good. Amazing. Wonderful. Thanks for sharing that, Ria. That was so good. Yeah, definitely we need all kinds of experiences. But yeah, so drop us in the chat as to what are some of your most methods of learning, because we all need both. You can't just be the theory based, it's got to be practical as well. So drop it in the chat as to what are some of your favorite methods that you want. So Ria, yeah, thank you for sharing that, because definitely we all need a bit of both. But yeah, so that was such an amazing conversation, Ria. I think what, when it comes to the different kinds of learning, what are we need to know what are our strengths, what are the weaknesses, and when we can identify those weaknesses, then we really know as to
Right.
where we need how we need to like navigate navigate the system in itself.
One other thing that I can share. So if your kids, if like, for example, my kids do not understand a complex, what I will do is I will introduce them to the active side. So there is theory, but if it's hard, if it's too complex for them, then bring them to the active cone of learning. For example, business, it's, nobody, they can't really grasp, right, the idea of the business because they're kids. But the way to teach them is actually to show them, have them start their own business like a lemonade stand, and then they'll slowly understand income, expense, net operating income, those simple terms. So if your kid do not understand one thing, that means we're just all passive, they're just passive. And so bring them to the active cone of learning. In that way, they will better understand. So don't just hammer the nail. Try to understand, why is this nail not going through? There must be something wrong.
Exactly, exactly. And it's that analogy, don't tell, but show. So, if someone is not really understanding or doesn't really know whether it's, math or anything, you have to show them that this is how it's done. And when we can do that, then the child or adult or anybody can really then follow that. So we
Right.
are absolutely 100% agree with that. And so, yeah, so we would like to know from you as to what are your methods of how do you, teach your kids? How do you teach yourself? How do you follow through? And so that's how we will begin to learn. So amazing conversation. I love this. It is so good when it comes to learning. We all have our styles.
For
So
sure.
right, well, yeah, absolutely. And so we have come to the end of another amazing show. This was such a great conversation piece. But yeah, as always, what are your styles? How do you cope? What are your strategies? Because we all have our strengths and weaknesses. So on that no, we will see you the same time, the same place come tomorrow morning and make the rest the best of your day. And we will see you soon. Bye for now, guys.